So good evening, Tewksbury. It is 6:18 p.m. on Thursday, April 16th, 2020. I'd like to call this Tewksbury Board of Health meeting to order. Still getting that feedback coming in. First item on the agenda tonight is approval of minutes. We have 3 listed: February 20th, March 20th, which is the combined Board of Health and Selectmen emergency meeting, and then last Tuesday's, actually 2 weeks ago, special meeting on April 7th. We don't have the February 20th meeting minutes available yet to approve, so we'll be just looking at approving the March 20th and the April 7th meeting minutes.
We do a beginning roll call too, for everyone who's
Yeah,
there.
actually, we should probably do that.
Kind of opening the meeting a little bit.
Yeah, let's do that. So first, let's just have a roll call. So first to the Board of Health, so we can identify, and then have everyone else just so we can know who's on the call. So it's myself, Chair Ray Barry.
Maria Zaroulis, clerk.
Tony, Charlie, you can go. Tony, you're on the call, correct?
Yes, I just said I was there.
Okay.
Can you hear me, Ray?
Charlie, okay. You're on, okay.
Okay, I'm here. I'm gonna put it back on mute. I think it was me
Okay.
that was the interference here.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so we get 4 out of 5 board members on. Okay. We have the meeting minutes of March 20th and April 7th. Maria has reviewed them. I've reviewed them as well. So does anyone have any questions about either set of meeting minutes?
Nope.
I'll make a
I have
motion
none.
to approve the minutes for March 20th.
You can do both in one motion.
I'll second.
So Tony and Charlie, who's seconding?
Charlie will second.
Okay. So motion's been put forth and seconded to approve the minutes of March 20th, 2020 as submitted. All those in favor signify by stating aye by roll call. So Mr. Rulis,
Aye.
Mr. Fischetti,
Aye.
Mr. Rue,
Aye.
votes aye as well. So that carries unanimously 4-0. And someone like to make a motion to approve the April 7th minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from April 7th.
Would like to second?
I second that, Ray.
Okay, Charlie seconded. So a motion's been put forth and second to approve the minutes of April 7th, 2020. So take a roll call to approve the motion. Mr. Rulis?
Aye.
Dr. Bichetti, sorry about that last one, calling you mister.
Aye.
And Mr. Rue?
Aye.
Okay. Votes aye as well, so that motion carries unanimously 4-0. Okay. And pause a quick second. Brian, if I pull my chat window up, I'm going to send you Mr. Scarano's cell phone number. If you could just give him a call, walk him through if you can how to get him connected.
Sure, we'll take care of it.
Okay. Do you have a cell number or?
No,
send it to you now.
if you put it in the chat, that would be great.
I'll do that right now.
He's got like 3 of them, so.
Yeah, I'm doing the one I was texting him on. Okay. Okay, so in old business, we have 199 Marston. Olivia Farm Custom Slaughterhouse, owner Dennis Oliveira. Update discussion post-public hearing progress. So Attorney Bornstein, if you can just introduce yourself, just state your name, address, and if you could just have everyone else that is joining this call with you, just state who they are and their address, then we can get going.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Don Bornstein. I'm an attorney with the Office of Johnson & Bornstein. My address is 12 Chestnut Street in Andover. I represent the Oliveira Farm in this matter.
Okay, and who else is joining tonight's meeting as part of your group tonight?
Sure, I'll introduce them. I believe call-in user 2 is our consultant, Kevin McCullough. And I believe call-in user 3 is Tina Pacheco, who is Dennis Oliveira's sister and helps him in some of the paperwork and management of the farm.
Okay.
I believe Dennis's daughter Eileen may be on with us. Yeah, I believe she is. And she's really here to observe. And I believe Mr. Oliveira's son is also likely watching from the YouTube live feed.
Okay. So Director Sawyer, is there anything you want to start off with?
Good evening, Chairman and everybody else. As far as it's been 2 months, I guess, has it been? March and February since this came before you. This is more of a continuance. It's not a public hearing. In this case, Mr. Bornstein has been sending weekly updates, although, as you know, we're in the middle of some problems here. So if he missed a week, I'm not sure if I even noticed. So thank you for sending the weekly updates, and I have been sending them along. But no, I have no other comment.
Helps if I unmute. Okay. So myself and the rest of the board are in receipt of your email you'd sent the director the other day with your voluminous report. And I guess you can sort of walk us through it, and then I'll start off with questions. So if you just want to walk us through what's in this first.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a little bit of a recap. I appreciate Director Sawyer's recap. We were last in front of the board, I believe, at the January meeting. Prior to that, the board had held a series of hearings. The public hearing was closed in late 2019, and we continued discussions with the board through meeting appearances, I believe, in December and January. I believe at your February meeting, you discussed amongst yourselves, the Oliveira Farm actually wasn't present at the February meeting, I don't believe, but you discussed amongst yourselves sort of the set of final materials, information, documents that you wanted to see from the Oliveira Farm to answer the various questions and items that we had been discussing over several months. So we had been working on that really since the beginning of this year, but certainly after viewing the meeting video from the February meeting, we've been working on that fairly consistently. Of course, over recent weeks, that's been more of a challenge. We have continued to submit our weekly status report. I believe Director Sawyer may be right. There were a couple of days we might have been late, given the changeover at my office and whatnot and going remote. But we did, I think, fairly consistently make those weekly status reports. And those really culminated early this week in the submission of materials responsive to the items that we gleaned from the February board meeting. So we filed a cover letter. It identified a number of areas of inquiry by the board. And with that cover letter explaining the submission, we submitted 56 pages of materials with that. Just very briefly, to give you a sense, if you haven't gotten deeply into those materials, we did submit a floor plan sketch of the meat processing plant, the slaughterhouse, as requested by the board. That also included an index, so the plant itself has numbered items. You have to match it with the index to know what each of those numbered items are. We submitted a property plan or site plan sketch of the property. It was based off a survey plan that was a few years old, and that was hand annotated to indicate the various structures that are presently on the property and their various uses. That also has an index. It has numbered items on the plan, but you've got to follow it by the index to know what all that most of those items mean. Mr. McCullough, who's on the conference with us tonight, prepared a memo sort of summarizing the workflow, operations, and his suggestions and direction on training for farm staff in a memo that he prepared. I believe there's a 6 or 7 page memo. We had provided sample forms in that same grouping of documents for livestock tracking, to track animals coming into the farm, to track product leaving the farm. We had provided a sample livestock care chart, so to track feeding and watering and daily care of the animals, the type of chart that would be hung in a barn or is hung in the barn, and that sort of operation can be, those tasks can be tracked on a daily basis or an hour by hour basis. We had submitted the disposal plan for the slaughterhouse. We had submitted various plans related to operations of the farm, including emergency plans, food safety recall plan. We had included a series of staff instructions on various topics. So those would be both training material, and they'd be material that would be readily accessible to staff on the farm, that included topics like personal hygiene and health procedures, reporting of illnesses, the sanitation procedures applicable to the meat processing plant, instructions on the storage and care of cleaning agents and toxins. And then we'd also included a series of food safety instructions that are provided to customers. So I believe those are produced by the USDA, and they've been copied and they're available at the farm and made available to customers. We provided samples of those basically food safety brochures. They include everything from sort of safe handling techniques to recipes and cooking suggestions. And then we had provided a set of the training materials, sort of all the personnel materials, the instruction sheets and whatnot. We've had those translated into Spanish, and provided with our package a set of those personnel training manuals and instructions as translated into Spanish. So you saw that we had those as well. So that's somewhat detailed summary of the materials that were submitted. They're fairly significant package. We're hopeful that that was responsive to the items that were identified by the board at the February meeting. Although the minutes weren't available for that meeting, we did review the video fairly closely to try and glean from that the items that were requested by the board, and that was our intent in the submission we made earlier this week.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And as I've been saying at prior meetings, where it's the first time we're going down this path with anyone, we do not have a set expectation or set detailed plan for what we're looking at in this document. And we did as I'd asked, that we want at least to see something. We didn't want this huge, lengthy effort if it went down the wrong path. So I appreciate what was put together. So thank you very much for you, Mr. McCullough, for pulling this all together. I do have some questions, starting with the floor plan. And as well, the page after, which is the numbered list or the key or the legend to the floor plan where the different doors and piece of equipment are numbered and labeled. I guess, is this the current representation of the slaughterhouse or where things are going to be? Because I know the plan was more focused on moving forward. This would be what everyone would use as sort of the operations manual, maintenance manual. So first I want to know, is the floor plan representative of current conditions, or is this more something that this is where it will be going?
I think I can answer that. My understanding is the floor plan is the current layout of the meat processing plant, the slaughterhouse.
Okay.
And that is, I don't think there's really intention or need at this point to make significant changes to that floor plan. There have been, you'll remember there was direction from Mass DPH to make certain repairs. Those repairs have been made. That information's been reported to Mass DPH and to the board going back into December and January. But I believe the floor plan, and I can display it if that helps, but I believe that's the current status and is expected to continue to be the layout of the slaughterhouse.
Okay. So some of the things I see that I thought were in the slaughterhouse, I don't see identified. So one of which is the pig deherring machine. And then I believe too, and I forget the proper term for it, but it's whatever the holding device is for slaughtering the cow, which I was led to understand from one of the animal inspectors that that's something that's inside the slaughterhouse.
Yeah, I can answer that, Don, if you want. Both.
Sure, and I'll put.
Go ahead.
I'll go ahead and put up the sketch while you're talking, Kevin.
Oh, great. That'd be helpful. Thank you.
It's a small plant, so when the deherring machine was refurbished and brought back in, that went exactly where it was. The restrainer, which as you face the building is on the side wall on the right against the back wall of the floor for the large livestock, the cattle, that is permanently bolted into the floor. And so that is as it's been represented. There's been no change on that.
So the restrainer is outside the footprint of the slaughterhouse center?
No, it's on, if you face the plant, the deherring machine will be on your right inside the wall. And then looking right opposite to the back wall, actually there's a dividing wall and then a back room. Steel cage, basically, entered into by panels are controlled from the time off the truck until they come into the restrainer. Should be right on your print if you have the print oriented so you're toward the garage door or the very center of the building. The restrainer will be on your right against the side and back wall.
Okay, so it looks like in the plan that was submitted, is that what would be referred to on, I guess, the page after the floor plan in terms of the livestock holding pen?
It should be labeled restrainer. It could have a pen label on there because the pen itself is outside the building. Again, on the right side of the building as you face it on the outside. And the livestock are unloaded into that pen, and then they go to the end of it, make a left-hand turn, go about 10, 15 feet, make a left-hand turn into the restrainer on the floor.
Okay, because on the numbered sheet, they list that outside area as a livestock chute. And then following your verbal description, because I realize you're on the phone tonight, not able to view the floor plan. When you go down that, make your immediate left, then that's identified as number 2, the livestock holding pen. Okay.
Yeah, so in other words, if you visualize looking at the building,
Yep.
right, the livestock, the pen for the large animals is on the right. Its door faces parallel to the front of the slaughter building, and then in the back of that there's another chute door, and the livestock enter that, go about 15, 20 feet, turn left, and then they're right into the restrainer, which is inside the building, which is a typical way. Actually, large slaughter plants do all of that. Dennis has a very efficient system that you don't see in too many small plants. Okay.
Okay. And then in terms of the location of the pig deherer, where is that
All right,
on the?
That's on the outer wall. Again, it would be just inside the wall against which the pen is in. So again, you face the building. You got a garage door more or less right in the middle. Okay? And
Yep.
just inside that door on the right is the dehairing machine. And then toward the back wall is the restrainer for the cattle. And then the pen is outside the wall of the dehairer, and that winds around the building and then enters the building on the side, a little deeper into the building than the dehairer. So everything's fairly compact, but with cattle, since they weigh anywhere from a light one of 700 pounds on up to 1,500 pounds, you have to have a more elaborate system than you do with the smaller animals.
Okay. So Attorney Boyce, if you wouldn't, we just ask that on that floor plan was it submitted, it just be updated to show the location of that pig deherer, and if there's any other apparatus that's in that slaughterhouse that's not listed there, it'd be good just to have it labeled. So if we're referring to something, we know exactly where in the slaughterhouse it resides. And again, we're not trying to question location. We just want to know where things are. So if we're talking, we can have a purposeful conversation, know that we're all talking about the same area.
Okay.
Now, in terms of the public entrance to the slaughterhouse, and I'm trying not to jump through pages in this, but in the document itself, where it's talking about the operations, it makes reference to customer would wait outside in the parking area, which you've identified on the page after the numbered list, so the plot plan. And then there was a note saying customer be directed to pull up to pickup door for pickup. So I see there are 3 doors listed, all identified as number 16 for emergency exits, and then there's a number 12 listed as a roll-up door.
Right, that's more or less in the center of the building.
Right. So first, is the parking area for the slaughterhouse up against or on the same side of the slaughterhouse as that roll-up door?
No, it's directly opposite. If you put your back to that roll-up door and walk completely across the open area, the customer parking is on the other side of the property, or on the left as you drive in with the plant on the right.
Okay.
And
So I
then
think
there's plenty of room. Yeah, go ahead.
So, Attorney Boyce, if you can go back 2 pages to the floor plan, I think that would be then the door that's in the center of the exterior wall. So that door is directly opposite that roll-up door.
All right. No, there's a door. There's a regular conventional door, 30-inch width, whatever, to the left of the roll-up door, right on the corner of the building.
So is that the public access door?
It would depend. If you would use the roll-up door if you were taking some product out simply because it's the shortest distance between 2 points, the cooler being right in the back left. Okay. So, and you bring the smaller animals in, goats and hogs, come in that garage door, that roll-up
Okay.
door. So the roll-up door should only be used for animals coming in and boxes of meat, or wrapped however it is going out. Okay. Just makes it easier to open the door and take it out than to come along and come through the floor from the back cooler, take a right, go down a short hallway, and then use the conventional door. You can do either one depending on weather and how much you're going to handle. If it's just 30, 40 pounds of meat, you can handle it through the regular door on the corner of the building. If it's more than that, and it's easier to roll the garage door up in the center of the building and have already pulled up a motor vehicle to load it.
Okay. And again, just to understand the process. So the meat cooler referring to that the butchered meat would be stored in waiting for the customer whose animal was slaughtered to pick up that butchered meat. That meat is stored in that cooler, which is identified as room number 5. So that's in the far left corner of the building.
Far left corner of the building, correct.
Okay. And the plan also identifies by number 15 stainless steel ice maker, which
Yeah,
is
that's just a
in-
conventional ice maker. Frequently, when you have your trimmings, when you're cutting up all the scraps that are left that you usually give the customer to grind, you mix some ice in with it. Or you can mix it if it's real hot weather, even after the product is bagged and in a box. Sometimes you want to put a bag of ice in there with it just to be safe.
okay. So
Ice is used in every packing plant in the country. Pound after pound after pound of it. And in some plants, they buy dry ice. CO2 comes in insulated tubs, and they use that as well. Everything temperatures as close to 34 or 5 degrees as possible.
okay. So from this layout, then the intention is that there would be an employee of the operations there would meet someone at that either roll-up garage door or at that door in the bottom left corner of the building or next to the left of that roll-up door that would have the
Right.
customer's butchered meat.
Right.
And so I guess one of my questions from this is, I was on the Board of Health back in 2014 when we had a first round of public hearings in this facility. And at that point, one of the board's concerns was that public was being allowed to walk throughout the slaughterhouse and witness slaughter operations. And one of the things I clearly remember from those meetings as a restriction, which was then one of the orders of condition we had placed, was that A, customers are not to observe the slaughtering, but B, there was to be a separate customer area within the slaughterhouse, and that there was also to be an ice machine present for customers to use if they so choose to cool their meat on their way home or as they were transporting it from home or wherever it was going to once they had picked it up from the slaughterhouse.
The change I recommended there is all my years in this business and 60 or 70 plants across North America, we don't want anyone in the plant who is not working in the plant, period. Okay? We don't want doors being opened where that'll affect the cooled down temperature. We don't want anybody walking through. We want everybody with proper boots, with proper frock coats, with hard hats. Okay? And so you keep everybody out. My recommendation on this is the meat is brought out to the customer the customer does not come in the plant.
which is
It's
music
just
to my
an
ears.
overall-
So,
That's an overall, not only, just to make it clear, that's not only a food safety issue, but it's a physical issue and a liability issue. We don't want anyone in there. We don't want them slipping on a floor, period. Okay? So,
no,
this is a rule that virtually everybody follows.
I'm in complete agreement with that, so thank you for that. Now, in terms of given the layout of things and where the customer isn't able to go into the back of the slaughterhouse to get ice to keep their meat cool, how is that being done now if customers aren't able to get into the ice machine?
Or you just put it in a plastic bag and take it out and hand it to them. Let them put it in or put it in a plastic bag in the box with the meat. Carry the meat out. They've got the trunk of their car open or the back door of a van or whatever they've got, and put it in there.
So
Again,
the
there's
staff
no
are
need for
providing
anybody to-
So the staff is providing the ice if
Yeah.
as warranted. Okay.
Yeah. Again, we don't want. It's one of those deals where if you let anybody in for one reason, there's going to be another reason, and we
Right.
don't want anyone in there for the health and safety reasons that I just referred to.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that because one of the issues that come up, and I think it was at the January meeting where a video had been posted showing people taking pictures of a pig going in the deherring machine. Back then, we had asked Attorney Bornstein to make sure that there were signs promptly placed around the building that public is not to go beyond these doors or videotape operations. And it seems like that's not needed if they're not even supposed to be in the building.
No, there's no need to have any of that. I don't care if they own the animal. Okay. Sorry, I've got a touch of laughter in my voice, but it's not. It's serious business. We don't want anyone in the plant who doesn't work in the plant. We don't want anyone taking photos of anything in the plant. Okay? Simply because they'll be misinterpreted. It's not like you've got something to hide. Okay?
Right. Yeah, because for those that's unfamiliar or unaccustomed to the slaughtering process, it looks
Right.
grotesque, but to the seasoned
yeah.
professional,
Yeah.
it's normal.
Oh, yeah. No, I've led tours in big plants out west and with senior executives from the supermarket chains. You know, I had a CEO one time, and he walked in, took one look at it, and promptly lost his cookies on the floor. So we don't want anybody in there at all, period, except the people working there.
Okay. So, Attorney Bornstein, if I could request just be added very simply to that floor plan, could it be just a handwritten note? Just
Okay.
like a note saying public access or I'll let you decide how to word it, but just some figure, some way of indicating which doors are to be used for the public
Good idea.
to get the meat from.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I believe we've actually already got employee-only
You've got
signs up at the farm now at the building. But we can make that, we can clarify that on the floor plan sketch.
Okay, thank you. And as well, just indicate on that floor plan where the parking area is.
All right.
Everything else that I went through in this seems to cover the types of things that we're looking for. The only thing that we had talked about, which I understand in some of the verbiage of the operations plan, is that the number of staff will vary depending on the needs of the day or the customer flow or requests, or the number of animals that are there. I think Mr. Scarano's on the phone now, so I'll defer to him and the rest of my questions. But I know that we've been asking for some type of I won't say necessarily an employee roster, but just some idea of who's who, sort of. Obviously, we have Mr. Oliveira as the main owner operator, but then he has an assistant, and then below them, there are other folks, and it's just sort of getting an idea of sort of people, how many staff are there?
Sure. So in preparing for the meeting tonight, and going through the 56 pages that we sent in with our letter earlier this week, I think both Kevin and I sort of came to the conclusion that maybe a very short summary of just that thing was appropriate to provide to the board. It wasn't included with my package, but I did prepare it, and I'll display it now. I think
Okay.
this might be what you're looking for, and it does have that sort of detail. Let's see if this is it. So in this information gets lost a little bit in that lengthy package. So I prepared this. I'll submit it before we later today after the meeting. But this will give you a sense of just the personnel, and maybe Kevin can just walk us through a little bit if that's what you want to hear. Just a little bit of who's who
I think
and
that'd be
how they
good.
work into the workflow at the farm.
That would be excellent. And this document is exactly, I think, what we're looking for.
Okay. First, this operation is very typical of small plants like it around the country. There's approximately, somewhere in the vicinity of 800 of these plants in the lower 48 states, scattered all over in every state. And many of them under federal inspection because many states turned over their inspection in the last 30 years to the feds, okay? So Massachusetts has a dual system. You've got both state approval and the feds, and they help one another out. So, having said that, this operation is no different than that. The owner has a knife in his hand very frequently, okay? So you can call him whatever you want, president, chief executive, he's also butcher. And also, the people who work for him, in this case, this is a small group, most of them, Dennis and 3 guys, sometimes 2. Everybody learns over time to do everything, okay? So they learn how to handle the animals, receive the animals, get them in, care for them, and then every step, slaughtering them, converting them to meat, okay? So everybody does a little of everything, depending on weather, depending on seasonal movements, depending on the weekly flow in and out of auctions and the customers, okay? So it's very difficult. You can start each morning and say, all right, Bobby, you're going to do this. Howie, you're going to do that, okay? But that's not going to be the same thing they're going to do tomorrow morning, okay? So
Yep.
It's a kind of a well-oiled team in the sense that everybody can cover for everybody. Everybody can basically do everything. And that's why you can't really do, in the real big plants, people do one thing. They're in one station, they do one cut with a knife, okay? And everything moves on a chain by them. But once you're outside those 30 or 40 big plants, there's 750 plants where everybody has to be cross-trained to do everything.
And so some of the information that you're seeing on this operational summary that I've shared just gives you a little bit of run through of the personnel that are in place at the farm now. And I will note that the 4th person down in personnel, I've just identified as new hire, just because I didn't know that person's name when I prepared this document this afternoon, but that person is employed at the farm now. So you have Dennis Oliveira, of course, owner operator. He's daily hands-on on the operations of the farm. Hashim Kambi, who's next listed on this sheet, that's someone who had assisted in meat cutting, particularly during busy periods in the past. We certainly understood from the board's comments over our series of meetings that they were looking for someone besides Dennis, who was experienced in meat cutting and would be able to take on that role as well, even in Dennis's absence. So Mr. Comby has been brought in as a regular part of the personnel team at the farm. It's my understanding that he is on site whenever the meat processing is in operation. So if they're slaughtering animals and meat cutting, they're doing it when he's there. And my understanding of his experience is that it's significant. He also has experience in the halal traditions of meat cutting and slaughter. Next person on the list, James Donahue. He's someone that's been hired to really head up the sort of typical farmhand, that the operation of the farm outside of the slaughterhouse. So the carrying and feeding of animals, cleaning of pens, watering, that sort of thing. He's the lead on that. There is a new person, a younger person, who I just have identified as new hire again, because I didn't know their name when I was writing this up. I misplaced my note on that. But they look to fill another role that I think the board had suggested to us in the past, was that a younger person be brought along in this, in this career, the meat cutting, slaughtering career. And they've been hired to really be an apprentice meat cutter to observe and assist in the slaughterhouse. And they're also available to assist in the regular chores of the farm as well. And I've also noted 2 family members there. They're not regular employees, but they are available and they do help out in tasks. Tina, who's on the phone with us right now, Dennis's sister, very much helps him with administrative type duties, paperwork, government filings. I suspect there's folks in town hall who are familiar with Tina. And then David Oliveira, his son, who's also helps out when necessary on an on-call basis if they're busy. And he's taken the lead on some farm repair items. One of those items being the fence repair that the board early on in our process had asked to be completed. David took that on and took the lead on that. So that's an example of the type of things he does. The rest of the information summarized in the sheet. Hours of operation, those are the hours as set by the board. You remember those were noted as a condition in the November-December meeting. I believe you'd requested information about the livestock auctions that they attend and that Dennis buys livestock at. So we've noted the 2 primary ones, the Lancaster, Pennsylvania auction held on Mondays and the Littleton, Massachusetts auction held on Tuesdays. And then I've noted that just to estimate the busy days for customer pickup would be those days later in the weeks, Thursday through Saturdays and holiday periods. And I think well known to the board, the types of livestock that are kept and sold on the farm are cattle, pigs, goats, and sheep. So I wanted to try and encapsulate sort of just a real snapshot of the real basic operational items. And that's in that single sheet. That wasn't with the letter we filed at the beginning of the week, but I'll submit that when we get off the meeting tonight.
Okay, thank you. And I realize that they're probably farmhands too, which we don't need to see in this, but this gives us sort of we're looking for the key roles and who's assigned to those key roles.
Exactly.
And then the only name I don't see under the personnel, and I don't have my notes with me in front of me, but I believe that Dennis had an assistant named Freddie.
Yes, and Freddie is no longer available and does not work at the farm any longer. Between Mr. Comby and Mr. Donahue, I believe they've taken over all of his responsibilities.
Okay. No, this document will be a big help, so thank you very much for putting that together.
You're welcome.
Because honestly, it helps if we have a roster of knowing who we're dealing with, because it makes life much easier. So thank you. So those are the questions I have. I'll turn it over to Mr. Thrulis and Mr. Scarano if they have questions.
I don't have any questions. I just like to say that I'm thrilled that Mr. McCullough could join tonight. I felt that this gave us a much clearer vision of what's going on there and how it's running. I love the updates to the operations of the slaughterhouse. I think that this was very helpful to me. I'm sure to everyone else as well. So thank you.
My pleasure.
And this is Mr. Scarano. I can just say that this is in a substantial step in what we had envisioned when we had first met. And I would say that I'd like a chance just to review it at a time when I can put it all in front of me. But it looks like you've made substantial strides to bringing this to where it should be for our further review and critique. And thank you again.
Okay, Mr. McCullough, is there anything else you'd like to educate the board on while we have you here tonight?
Well, just to say, again, just to slightly reiterate, this is an opaque business. Hardly anybody knows anything about it. It's huge in terms of, just to give you a little example, there's about 32 to 4 million cattle slaughtered in the United States every year, and about 120 million hogs. Okay? Just picture that if they were all out in the field, it would cover 8 states out west. Okay? So it's a very, very large business. It's tied to a whole system of distribution and retail. And then there's the small local facility like this. As I said, there's over 700 of these around the country. There's livestock in every state in the country, even in small quantities. Not like Nebraska where there's millions of them, but these plants operate along very similar lines. They do a little of everything: cattle, hogs, lambs, goats, anything that qualifies in those categories. And then they sell meat locally, and in this case, the meat that the animals are then owned by the individual customers, who then pay the plant to convert them into refrigerated meat. So it's a very typical operation. Whenever I go into one of these things, there's always a few things you can tighten up. As you probably heard the tone of my voice, I don't want anybody in these plants, period, unless they work there. You know, it's too dangerous. And too much can be misinterpreted. I don't want photos taken. You know, all that stuff just leads to misunderstanding. And so this is a tight little operation. I like the plant. I've probably been in, I've been in all 35, 40 of the big plants, and probably been in 60 or 70 of the smaller plants over the years. And I rank this right up on the top. It's a nice, neat facility. Okay. You'd like to have it a little bigger, but I've never been in one where the plant manager didn't want it a little bigger, with a little more space to do a little more work. But it's well kept up building, and the hog deharer was the only thing that really, when I was in there, needed, I pointed out needed to be replaced right away. So that's been all refurbished, rebuilt. But other than that, no, it's just procedures. And as you can see, these things are not easy to manage. You have to have a great deal of knowledge, and you don't do the same thing every day. You got a whole series of tasks, and it gets complicated by weather and seasonal patterns, and heat versus cold. I mean, you got to handle a little bit of everything. So it's a nice, neat facility, and as I say, they've tightened it up considerably in the last few months. So I would place it right up there in a category with the better run small local plants around the country. And I would just add as a finishing note, I'll be glad to jump on the phone with Don, if any of you offline in the next week. So as you digest the whole report, if you've got some more questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and we're glad you were able to join us tonight and help walk us through this document.
Okay, my pleasure.
So any other questions from Mr. Rulis or Mr. Scarano?
I have none, thank you.
Okay.
I have none, thank you.
Okay. Well, I think that, as Mrs. Scarano said, those take us some little bit of time just to digest everything that's in here. And then if we have any questions, we will just direct them to Director Sawyer, and then she can just get in contact with you if there's any clarification or any additional information. And as you said, you would be making a copy of that operations plan available to us as well. So thank you for that. And I think we'll just keep this on the agenda for next month, just so that we have a chance just to get the questions that we had asked and answered, and see where we go from there. And I guess my final question is, now that this document has been submitted to us, what are the plans moving forward for implementing what's stated in the document, both in terms of training the current staff, and then is there going to be any type of planned follow-up to ensure that once a plan has been put together, that it is actually being implemented?
Yes, so on that, we actually already started talking this afternoon amongst ourselves about follow-up by Kevin. So Kevin's already has put out some tentative dates with the farm for him to come up and do his follow-up. That was always something we had planned to do. At that point, he'd be able to speak to the personnel on the farm as well. That's a big part of what he'd spend his day doing, go through some of these plans and operational instructions at that time. Some of that's a little bit dependent on travel restrictions and the circumstances we find ourselves under, but that would be a next step and one we'd want to take sort of ASAP.
Okay.
Yeah, it just
And
have just have to wait to the appropriate juncture. I'm not probably susceptible to anything out of livestock, but I don't have any resistance to what comes out of bats.
Yeah, we're all, and that'll be a good segue into our next topic. But yeah, we're also very aware of what's going on out there.
Right.
So,
And by the way, if I could add a little parenthetical note, what goes on in China in these so-called wet markets, there's absolutely no way any of that would be tolerated anywhere in this country. The USDA and the State Department of Agriculture go back. I mean, the rules and regulations were toughened up in the 1920s. And I mean, it's beyond me what goes on over there. So you should all clearly understand that your meat sources in the United States are on a scale of safety are always bumping up against the proverbial 10. And I didn't even know if the Chinese can make a 1.
that's sobering when you realize how much meat we get from China.
Yeah, I wouldn't, I don't eat any food from China. Never have. I don't care what it is.
So the last thing I will mention, and Mrs. Scarron, you can chime in if you either concur, thoughts otherwise. We had been asking, or the board had been asking for a biweekly status update. I think I would just change it for the next meeting that if there's anything substantial to report, just to notify the director. But outside of that, I don't see that there's a need for these biweekly reports to continue up to the next meeting, because really we're trying to make sure that this plan get put together, and now we have it, and now we can study it. So I think, unless you have other thoughts, Mrs. Scarron, I think we can ease up the bi-weekly reporting, and just, again, if there's anything that's really noteworthy to report, then just notify. But if not, then we'll just plan and see you at our May meeting.
I would agree. From a clarification standpoint, you are under an obligation to report anything outside of the guidelines that you've put together for your own operation, obviously. But I think our next step is a request for information or clarification to you, and consequently, I would agree with the chairman that no interim reports are necessary until we issue that document from the board after review of your materials. And I would suspect we would have some information requests to you within 3 weeks so that you could respectfully respond by the time of the next meeting.
What's the date of your May meeting?
May 21st.
May 21st. Okay, I want to put that in my calendar to be sure I'm in town. Okay.
Yeah, and just as a rule of thumb, not that we expect you at every upcoming meeting, but we tend to meet on the third Thursday of the month.
Third Thursday. Okay. All right.
Okay. Well, I thank you, Dave Weinstein and Mr. McCullough and members of the Oliver family that joined in today. We look forward to continuing to go down the path that we're on right now. So thank you all very much.
Correct. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the end of every board meeting that I do, I always thank the board for their time for that evening. And tonight, I think that's especially important. I've had many more board meetings canceled than I've attended since these circumstances started. And I appreciate the effort that's been put in by the board members and your staff and all the folks that made this possible tonight. So I'd like to end our participation by thanking you for your time.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And stay safe, everyone.
All righty.
Okay. So the rest of us will stay on and so moving on to new business, COVID-19 update. So I'll turn this over to the director.
Good evening, everyone. I'm getting some feedback, just so, don't know if that's a problem. Oh, that's better now. I don't know if you've had time to check your emails, but I did just forward about a half an hour ago, 45 minutes ago, the town manager's most recent update that he sent out. So please check your emails for that. Just on our weekly communications as much as possible. Note that Libby's here with us. Shannon is also here on phone mode. For some reason, her camera's not working. And actually, Lisa's listening in too. So she's taking some notes, I'm sure, for get these minutes done quick. So I don't know exactly where we want to go with tonight's meeting. I can give you basically what we're doing is continuing on the tracing of the cases, and Irby is here if you have any questions on that. Shannon and I doing a lot with communication with businesses, some that we know might need some direction, and some that maybe for a response to a complaint or comments. Everyone in general, they have been very good to work with the businesses. They've listened to our concerns and worked with us to come up with compromises that were good for their business as well as safety for the customers without having to overregulate per se. And they're all, of course, flexible. If there are some things that don't work, they can always change that. I had just been on a call with Ocean State Job Lot a couple hours ago, and that went well at talking about their compliance to the numbers for 40% of their occupancy. And one thing I didn't know if anybody does go to Job Lot, they actually are giving away, I guess you'd call them tablecloths. Everyone is allowed to take one, and they're of such material that you could make masks out of. So, and they also allow their staff 30 minutes out of their day, people who work there, 30 minutes out of their day to actually make masks for themselves. Apparently they're a very creative bunch. So I thought that was an interesting call that I had then. So we've had a lot follow-up, and I guess, Irvi, if you want to give us an idea of how the interviews are going with the people when you call, and are there any concerns or any things that tips you can give people on maybe keeping an eye on what their symptoms might be, or anything, something like that? And also, how are the symptoms changing over the past 2 months? Do we have new things to look out for?
Hi. So I found that there's a lot of feedback. Okay. I found that symptoms aren't always fever, shortness of breath, and cough. Some people are experiencing some GI distress. Some people I'm sure you guys have heard, have lost their sense of smell and taste. And a lot of headaches. A lot of people have complained about headaches. So those are kind of some of the other things to keep an eye out for. If you've been around somebody that's been sick, and you are contacted by a contact tracer to quarantine, please listen to the directions. We're really in the mitigation phase of this pandemic, and we're past containment, but it would be good to contain where the exposures have been isolated, as to not spread the disease even further. So you may get a call from from a worker of the Community Tracing Collaborative, they're called, and they're basically they are part of the organization Partners in Health, and they've been, I don't know if they're contractors or what the right term for it is, but they're basically calling folks that have tested positive and their close contacts to do the contact investigations and to give you directions on how to isolate and how to quarantine, so that if you get a call from somebody that's not the town of Tewksbury, don't be alarmed. These are people that have been hired to help us, because one call to a positive case could take up to 45 minutes to complete, and that's just the positive case. And then we also have to contact all their close contacts and give them instruction to quarantine. So don't be alarmed if you get a call from a phone number that's not a town of Tewksbury phone number. So that's kind of it in a nutshell for me, I think, right now. Any other questions?
Irvi, do you know, this is Bob Scarano, do you know if these people that are reaching out to call have a protocol to introduce themselves to the person being traced, so that they understand that it's a legitimate reach out as opposed to an illegitimate reach out?
So I don't know that there's like a protocol, but I do believe that the caller ID might contain the Community Tracing Collaborative as a caller ID number. And obviously they identify themselves as the Community Tracing Collaborative contact tracer. Other than that, I'm not familiar with any protocol that they may have in terms of being able to identify themselves.
Maybe we ought to include that on the website or within our information, so that people can refer themselves to the website and make sure they're being contacted by someone that's legitimate and working in a collaborative method to actually do this tracing. Certainly, if there's any questions as to who you're speaking with as a public member, you should be looking for this caller ID. And Irvi, could you just mention their name one more time?
Sure. So there's a couple of different organizations that are doing it right now. There's the Public Health Volunteer Corps. And those are the local public health students. So they come from an array of a background. They could be masters in public health students. They could be undergraduate students. They could be doctorate students. And that is a volunteer-based organization. And then there's the other piece of it, which is the Community Tracing Collaborative. I believe that the two together are the Community Tracing Collaborative. It hasn't really been clearly defined. But the other organization that's, these are paid employees, is the Partners in Health Contact Tracers. And I think that I'm fairly sure that they both go by the Community Tracing Collaborative. Honestly, it hasn't really been made really clear to us, even from the State Department of Public Health. We've, you know, they're all hands on deck, and they've got a million things going on, and they're trying to really get the help out to us as quick as possible. But unfortunately, in that, sometimes communication is a little bit lost. But it would be either Partners in Health or the Public Health Volunteer Corps, or the Community Tracing Collaborative. Those are the three kind of terms that they would probably use.
Thank you. And Irvi, this is Ray. Isn't one of those groups primarily tasked with the contact tracing or surveillance of those that have gone through the CVS on-site testing that's been set up in Lowell?
I believe so, but honestly, as I said, the communication from the State Department to the local department hasn't really been that great. So there's a lot of things that are still even unclear to us at the local level. So unfortunately, I don't have an answer for that.
Okay.
So this is Susan, any other questions on what we've been doing? Shannon did send out another email to the establishments, and I don't know, Shannon, did you send the one you're working on today or not? Are you here?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. I sent it to you to review, so I haven't sent it out yet, but I will do that tomorrow, and then I'll forward it to the board.
Okay. And the subject matter of this one was a little different, trying to help people in a different position, right?
Yes, it's communication if there's a positive in a food establishment, and then guidance from the FDA from the phone call that they had on last Friday.
Yeah, there's people don't know what to do because the idea is to keep it out of your restaurants, right, and out of your food establishments. But it could happen that someone, maybe their mother was ill and now they're ill. So there's been a couple of questions asked of us. Well, do I need to close? Do I have to close my restaurant? So that's why we put this together.
And Susan, I think the other thing I just want to bring up is the education piece, where this week we have some phrases, New Englandy phrases that we had advertised or pushed out to the residents. And then as you and I have been talking of what's the next area, and this is where I'll put it out to the members, but and I haven't done this yet myself. I don't think any of us want to create regulations and residents requiring them to wear masks all the time on the roadside or in grocery stores, but I think there are things that we can at least do to continue to educate residents about additional steps that they can do to try to keep themselves protected or to start protecting themselves. And one that we've talked about before is just simply have a Ziploc bag in the front seat of your car along with the hand sanitizer. And so I was going to take just a picture of my front seat just as an example, and maybe we do some type of when the town manager sends out the education communication from the health department, of include a picture and include some type of brief description. But then I think it'd be good too, Tony, if you've had a chance to find a video or at least a link to a video we could put on the health department's website that would educate people in A, the proper way to take off gloves, and B, the proper way to take off masks, especially now where with the shortage of masks, if you're not making one that can be washed, then fortunately we have to reuse the medical masks that we have, and how do we properly take it off and store it so that we can then reapply it and not be driving around all the time with the mask on, but take it off when we're not out amongst the public.
Do any of the members have any thoughts of that on educational tools or things?
I have a bunch of pictures. I have a bunch of pictures on the proper donning of masks and removal of masks. I just didn't send it out last time to see where we were with the meeting. So we can either send it out in a video, or I can forward you some pictures that we can put on a poster if they want to make a poster.
Yeah, if you can send us
Things
both,
we
then we
can
can
think
sort of
of.
look and see what might be best. It might be we choose pictures through a email, Facebook campaign, but then have a link if people want actual instructions, they can watch a video.
Can I interject real quick?
Sure.
I have Susan had mentioned this earlier, it's Irvi, that the Public Health Volunteer Corps is also available to help us with educational material and community relations kind of material. So that's something that Susan had brought up to our team leader earlier today. So, you know, that's definitely kind of something that's in the works for us. If, you know, Susan had reached out to ask if they already had perhaps like some sort of a video or a production, or maybe one that they like, that we could use. I haven't heard back yet, but I can definitely let you know either way, you know, whether they already have something, or maybe they have a suggestion to a particular YouTube video, or maybe they have something of their own through the Public Health Volunteer Corps.
Well, thank you for that. And again, Susan asked if board members have any other ideas for topics that we think we need to educate residents on. And then if you have any ideas of how to do it, please send them on in, because as I mentioned, email earlier to Richard, I'd rather, I think we'd all rather educate than regulate.
Correct.
I would entertain some thoughts regarding people in other parts of the country less affected by COVID that are now initiating to open back their businesses. As we know, each one of these specialized businesses, they are the experts running their own business. They are the people that are going to lead opening up their businesses back to the public. Each one of those non-affected states, and even states that have recovered quickly, are now looking at methodologies to bring the public back into their business and to consistently keep spacing and social separation as a priority as they attempt to open their business. The businesses in our community certainly should be looking at some of the things those similar businesses are doing to allay the fears of the public, to bring them back into their businesses. At some point, this will become a ramp up, and we know that that is coming as well, but it's never too early to start preparing, watching, looking at what other people are doing, other experts in their field that are now communicating methodologies to open their business and bring the public back in. So I suggest that the Tewksbury businesses, while we're not ready to do that right at this moment, start looking at putting together planograms, table diagrams, routes available through their business. These are all things that are going to have to take place before one opens back up in Massachusetts. And certainly, we know that the people that operated their business are the experts. With what they've learned over the last several weeks, they should be able to implement in their openings. So I would suggest that we continue this as a topic throughout the next weeks, and we certainly put it on our next meeting agenda.
Okay, and the last thing I'll add to dovetail into that, Bob, is that late this afternoon, the White House did release the president's, or I guess the White House's recommendations for getting businesses back in line, and it was a multi-phase step approach. And I quickly glanced at it before tonight's conference call, and it's interesting to note there is no description of time frame. They're listing what are the key elements health-wise that you need to be at in order to consider implementing that phase. And to me, it was of interesting note, partly because I'm working at a high school, and that was that phase one involved slowly getting some people out there, but things such as schools, they were still recommending stay closed. So I think it'd be interesting seeing how people and Governor Baker and others digest these guidelines of how that will enter into their thinking. But it seems like as you're talking about businesses coming back in line, it's not an easy decision to do that. And at least there is a framework out there that states can use as guidance. And it'll be interesting to see how the state will take that information and what type of guidance they'll put out to communities.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of the release of any information from the White House, but you certainly can see other governors in other states making active plans to re-engage the economy. And obviously, those types of activities are going to be experimental and trying to balance the health needs as well as the economy needs. And I think that those will be good lessons learned when it becomes Massachusetts' time to implement.
So I guess the last thing to mention tonight is that our next meeting, our next regular monthly meeting will be in May 21st at 6 p.m. However, we've already scheduled special meetings for the following 2 Tuesdays. This Tuesday, the 21st at 1 o'clock, will be again by WebEx, and going to be solely talking about the COVID pandemic. So I think it'd be good at that meeting that if anyone has education ideas or any photos or videos, they can send it out to the group ahead of time. We can look at those and then sort of look at what do we do next. And if there's something that seems to be, I guess we're Thursday already, so I guess we can at least at that meeting on Tuesday sort of look at what types of things we want to try to get out to residents. And then I know Richard Monturi has been more than willing to, as soon as Susan sends him these things, he'll get them right out in Facebook and push them out via email. And so the town manager is really trying to make sure that residents stay as well educated and informed as possible. So with that, Director Sawyer, is there anything else you wanted to add tonight?
No, I don't think
I
so.
have nothing.
Go ahead.
Bob Scarano, I'm all set. I have nothing.
Okay.
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. Charlie?
Did you hear me? Excuse me.
Now
Can you hear
I
me? Okay, sorry about that. Now my phone's ringing. No, I'm all set.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I guess it's time for your motion, Charlie.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn the meeting tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, who'd like
I
to
will
second that motion?
I will second that motion.
Okay. Motion's put forth and second to adjourn tonight's meeting. We'll take a roll call vote. Either say yay or nay. Mr. Rulis,
Yay.
Mr. Scarano,
Yay.
Dr. Bichetti,
Yay.
Mr. Rue,
I like my new scarf. Yay.
chair votes aye as well, so it's unanimous. So 7:39 PM. Good night, Tewksbury.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Bye.